Welcome to Shook Coverlet, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. We are here for a video which will appear in two separate playlists here on the channel. Number one, it is the 34th in about a 35-part series, journeying through Fairy Tale by Stephen King. But it will also be an entry in the opening paragraphs playlist here on the channel. I think that opening paragraphs are a very interesting part of literature when you talk about what it means to read a novel. The opening paragraph of a novel is the first opportunity that the author gets to really grab you and make a statement. And if he or she doesn't, there's 300 pages after that that will not be finished. So it is a tricky situation to be setting up all of the intrigue necessary to carry a reader through a novel, but also give the reader enough information that they feel confident moving forward. Real quick, before we get into things, guys, if you enjoy this sort of thing, hitting the like button helps me out because it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. I don't know why I forgot the phrase there. And if you find yourself here by chance but not design, consider hitting the subscribe button in order to stick around for more. Also, there is a link to my personal channel to be found in the description below. On my personal channel, I talk about philosophy, I talk about movies, I talk about goal setting, I do cultural essays, things like that. Now, let's get into it with the opening paragraph of Fairy Tale by Stephen King, and it's a brief one. The opening paragraph for Fairy Tale reads as such: "I'm sure I can tell this story. I'm also sure no one will believe it. That's fine with me. Telling it will be enough. My problem, and I'm sure many writers have it, not just newbies like me, is deciding where to start." The first thing that we can probably tell about this novel from the opening paragraph is that this novel is going to suck. No, not really, but there are some things that we can take away from this. First, the thing that has to be noted is that we are in a first-person novel, and this comes with a set of questions. Number one, is our narrator likable? So, what will our relationship with this narrator be? From the opening paragraph here, we don't really get a sense of that. It is fairly neutral. But also, is the narrator believable? Do we find ourselves questioning the things that this narrator is telling us, or are we taking them for granted? Because it can be an unlikable narrator that you have no question is telling you the truth, or it can be a likable narrator who's probably fudging around the edges. Both of these things are, so obviously you can have a likable, truthful narrator, that's one thing. You can have an unlikable, lying narrator, that's another. But the real interesting places for me are the unlikable but honest narrators that you don't question, and the likable but dishonest narrators who you can tell are sort of sleazebags, right? Sort of goading you along. It turns out that we seem to have in this novel a believable and neutral. I won't say that Charlie came across as particularly likable. Not much of his personality is shared with us, but I won't say that he was ever dislikable. Now, the reason I think that we can really tell that this is an honest narrator is he says he doesn't think you're going to believe it. But that's a fine line, isn't it, guys? Because the minute you open up the question of whether or not the narrator will be believed, you're really allowing for questioning to happen. So, is it possible at the end of this novel that it's just completely made up and it was in Charlie's head? Yeah, it's possible. We have no reason to believe that. The narrative here is such that the things unfold in maybe unlikely fashion, but never really too stupendous, right? The one conceit that is really sort of out there, once you accept that we're going to be in a fantasy world, is that Charlie, well, he's the prince, don't you know? Isn't that obvious? He should be the prince, but ends up not being a prince. So, okay, there's that. The second thing that we have to sort of take away from this is that this is a first person narrative, and we're already saying that you might not believe it. So there's going to be some wild stuff going on. And if the narrator sets up that expectation and then it's just a mundane story, we're getting back to questioning whether or not that is a reliable narrator. So the fact that it does go through a stupendous route, that we do go into fantastic new worlds, etc., says that our narrator is being truthful. There's the next thing that I want to talk about here, and so I'm getting into something that's going to sound like a criticism of the book, but I'm still not sure that it is. So Charlie sets up the idea that he is a newbie writer. Okay, so going into the story, we have no idea from whence Charlie is writing. We have no idea where Charlie has started this story. We understand that he is a high schooler at the beginning of the book. We understand that he is a high schooler until the epilogue in the book. Where does the newbie writer come into play? When we start reading this, we don't know, right? We get into it, and there is a little bit of a growing intrigue, I think, as to when does this guy become a writer? Because he's a jock in high school who seems pretty good with his grades, but nothing particularly literary going on with his life. He finds this old man, quits sports, but doesn't pick up the pen, and then goes to the world of Impus, and never the livelong day does he write a sentence. So we get this little callback at the end, but along the way, this opening paragraph would set up the intrigue as to when does this part happen. Unfortunately, we don't see it in the novel. It's not there, but most times, especially if you're talking about reading, right? If you are reading someone who foretells that they are a writer, we want to know why. We want to know how. We want to know when that comes about, right? So it's sort of like Chekhov's gun. You don't put it in the first scene unless it's going to go off by Act 3. It doesn't here. But again, so I'm not trying to get into the sort of criticisms of the novel, things that I don't like about the novel, but I think they're ever present. I think they're ever present with this book in particular once we get to the end, and it has gone so many different places, but not necessarily what you can tell from the opening paragraph. So just for example, if this is your first time in one of the opening paragraph videos, watch one of the other opening paragraph videos that I've done. It is sort of stunning how much of the novel you can really get from the first few lines. Even if it's just characterization, you understand that characterization going forward. For example, in American Psycho, this is one of the videos that I've done. In American Psycho, "Abandon all hope, ye who enter here," is scrawled in blood-red lettering on the side of the chemical bank near the corner of 11th and 1st, and is in print large enough to be seen from the back seat of the cab as it lurches forward in traffic, leaving Wall Street, and just as Timothy Price notices the words, a bus pulls up, the advertisement for Les Miserables on its side, blocking his view. But Price is with Pierce and Pierce, and 26 doesn't seem to care because he tells the driver he will give him $5 to turn up the radio. Be My Baby on WYNN, and the driver, black, not American, does so. You can pick up so many of the characters' judgments from black, not American. That is an indicator of status for this speaker. Be My Baby on WYNN Music, very big deal in this. Abandon all hope, ye who enter here, are the opening words of this novel. You know where you're going. In this novel, we don't really get that. The opening paragraph for Fairy Tale seems to be the opening paragraph for what could be a million different stories. It has nothing to do with the book that we end up actually getting from Stephen King. But the final thing I want to talk about here is on those same lines as what is going on with the speaker and his writerhood, because he says, quote, "I'm sure I can tell this story," end quote. He's just not sure other people will believe it. So that tells us, that gives us a little insight into the fact that probably what we're working with here is someone who has the confidence to say, yeah, I can tell this story, but also the grasp of the story to say, no one's going to believe it. This suggests that our speaker is more accomplished outside of the realm of writing, because what it's saying is, I'm sure I can tell this story. I have the confidence to tell this story. I'm not sure anyone's going to believe it. That is saying that if no one's going to, if you're an expert writer, you know people are going to believe it. So this tells us that the narrator, the speaker in question, has more skill in the world, more capabilities than he has writing capabilities. So those are the 5 sort of things that I think you can tell from the opening paragraph of Fairy Tale by Stephen King. That's all I have for this video. This is the latest in the opening paragraph playlist, as well as the 34th and a 35-ish part series for Fairy Tale by Stephen King. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, consider hitting the subscribe button in order to stick around for more. If you like this sort of content, literary content, hitting the like button tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers, and I would appreciate that. And finally, there is a link to my personal channel to be found in the description below, so go over there, check that out, and see if there's anything over there you might want to follow as well. I'm here every Monday with poetry and several times a week with literature, and I hope to have you back for the next one.